Hey, Craig, welcome back. Jump right in. Tell us a little bit about, get our audience kind of acquainted with who you are again, and then let's talk about Red Dot.
That sounds great. Well, my name is Craig Kausen. I have titles and everything, but I think the most important is that I'm one of Chuck's grandsons, and so I grew up with Chuck Jones. I'm one of the founders of the Chuck Jones Center for Creativity back in 1999 when the inspiration came to create a possibility to propagate what seemed to happen naturally for Chuck to inspire creativity and different types of thinking. He was an incredible creative. And so the Center for Creativity has been around 27 years, which is amazing. But 16 years ago, actually, now in 2011, we founded the Red Dot Auction. And what it is that the initial idea was that we would ask some of our friends and artists to contribute original works of art. And so back then, the discipline was that it was a 12-inch by 12-inch canvas. And I still remember that first event where along one wall, there were 41 pieces of artwork. And the artists ranged from internationally collected artists down to, and I don't mean down, but I mean as far as age and accomplishment, to my 6-year-old daughter who did a painting. And back then, and for the last 15 years, it has always been an anonymous donation. So we share who the artists are, but that we had not named which piece of artwork went with which artists. And so you bid on just what you love. Now, after 15 years of experiencing that and figuring out how to make that as successful as possible by request by artists, by collectors, by just trying something different. I think that's what a Center for Creativity is supposed to do. This is the first year that we are actually having the bio of the artist next to the artwork. And so they've always been able to tell their story about why they participate, but now the request was, let us tell the story about why we made this piece of artwork. Now, it may be an accomplished artist like Ben, who's here today, or it might be one of the students who participates in one of our unique programs, let's say with an autism spectrum student who's been working with us for a year or something, and they're inspired to create something. So there will be that story along with it. But basically, the idea is artists and students and anybody who really wants to gets to donate a piece of artwork, and then we auction it off to raise funds for the Center for Creativity. So that's the Red Dot side. The Center for Creativity, founded in 1999, not necessarily, and people say, was this Chuck's dream to create something? And it was really by his blessing. The idea being that he inspired people to think differently. And someone asked the question, how do we continue this legacy, even though Chuck didn't want a legacy? But he did say that if you want to honor what we did, figure out what you love, figure out what you are passionate about, and do that to the utmost. And by doing that, you'll honor us because that's what we did. So with that, in 1999, the inception of the Chuck Jones Center for Creativity to provide the opportunity for people to exercise that part of their brain that thinks differently. It's not just learning, but it is new ideas and that imagination. And I was inspired just recently both by Einstein and Newton in a book that I'm reading. And the idea that both Einstein said that imagination and creativity are more important than knowledge because imagination and creativity are everything that can be, not just everything we currently know. And Newton talked about that with all of his discoveries and what he saw that no one else saw centuries ago, that he was standing at the edge of a vast ocean, and that what he saw were ripples against the beach and the rocks there, and that there was infinite possibilities. So that's the idea of the Center for Creativity, to allow people to exercise their unique creativity in whatever discipline, whether it's education, whether it's science, whether it's animation, whether it's art, business, to exercise their unique creativity. So that's surrounding about it. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
When is the event and how can other people get involved? I know you mentioned artist participation, and I know obviously people who collect art want to probably be part of this. Give us the details of the actual event itself.
Yeah, so this is the 16th annual, as I mentioned, Red Dot auction. It's on April 18th here in Orange County. And for the third year in a row, it is going to be at the most magnificent space. It's the Segerstrom Shelby Event Center down in Irvine. And it was founded by Ted and Ray Segerstrom. They're avid collectors of Shelby Cobra cars. And they have a 40,000 square foot space that they hold events in. And we met them about 2.5, 3 years ago, and they were so kind to invite us in and allow us to hold our Red Dot auction there. And it's the perfect venue, let alone the artwork that we are showcasing. It is worth showing up just to see that space, see the collection of cars. They don't have them all, but you'll see somewhere between 80 and 90 beautiful vintage Shelby Cobra cars there that night. We take the center area. We have live performance artists who come and entertain, but there's also people who have been donating for the last 15 and now 16 years. And so it's all out on display. It's all silent auction. There is online. If you can't get out to California, it's all online. So participate that way if you can't be there. But if you want to show up, red.auction.org is where to go, or the chuckjonescenter.org website will give you information about how to sign up and join us. So sign up as a bidder, come and experience it. It's really the best way to do it. So if you have to fly in from Minnesota or New Jersey or New York, we do have people fly in from all over the country to experience this event every year.
And for what it's worth, I have been to the event. Whether you like art, cars, or both, it is phenomenal. It's a pretty good show. It's a great event. It's a great experience. And yeah, to echo what Craig said, that facility is fantastic. It's amazing.
And they're so nice. I mean, Ted and Ray are there welcoming everybody. They love what we do. They're some of the most warm, wonderful people that you can dream about. And everybody who's there is there to have a good time. And I think that's everything. Chuck was inspired by making people laugh and making people smile. And so for nearly 90 years, and he laughed himself, he drew all the time, and I know he would have enjoyed participating. And there's actually, in the past, we've secretly put Chuck Jones artwork into the auction, but this year I'm going to have to name them, which is wow, I always had so much fun in secretly putting those in there, but I guess now, and for those in the past, if we ever go back to it, for years we named the artist Sanaj Surlak, which is Charles Jones spelled backwards, and so Sanaj Surlak donated every year, and that was when somebody bid on an original Chuck Jones drawing, that's what they got. But this time we'll have to. The artist will sign on the front, so I'll find something out of my collection to donate this year with a signature on it. So anyway, very fun.
That's correct. Slight pivot over to Ben. Ben, you are also a return guest to the podcast, so thank you for coming back. Give us a little bit of update, what you're doing, what you're up to these days, but then also let's talk about kind of what this means. So Red Dot, basically it's a fundraiser to get some things going and cash flowing so that we can support CJCC and all the great programs that it does. I know you're heavily involved in a lot of those things. Tell us about that and kind of your involvement and kind of what this means to CJCC.
First of all, thank you for having us back on. I appreciate that. And what I love Red Dot, because Red Dot for me is the beginning to my relationship with Chuck Jones and Craig and Linda and everybody. Because after 2012 and JFG coming out for the first time to that very next year, I came out for Red Dot. And that's where the relationship changed just from a spectating fan of all these things into a more active role in both on the art side and then in the nonprofit side. And it all started with Red Dot. And what I loved about the whole idea behind it was it's people expressing themselves and using characters that we all loved, we all grew up with, right? We still grew up with. I have my from my oldest college age kids down to my elementary age. You know what we watch? Do they watch the new stuff? No. They love classic Looney Tunes, and that era of things, and Chuck Jones. And what I love about it, Craig put an exclamation mark on it. Like, Chuck and his team, they did things to make themselves laugh, right? It was funny. They made other people laugh, and they're like, you know what? We really believe in this. And so all the stuff that they poured into it. And what I always found fascinating too was the stories from Craig and Linda, and where Chuck would go to hospitals and talk with neurosurgeons and all these people to understand what they were doing, to go to JPL, and forget the Acme rocket, and how all that stuff developed. Well, like, let's see what we can actually do with it. And to talk to like engineers and scientists, and to understand that creativity isn't just art. And I think that was one of the things that as people got into, they're like, well, I'm not creative. And what the Chuck Jones Center has done really well is we use art to unleash that, because it's an emotional thing. And if we're supported in that creativity and that emotional outlet, we're more apt to try more things. If we're suppressed in that, is when it just starts to go away, and it can go away at a very young age. And how many people, Craig, have we come across in the last 20 some years, that we've talked to, specifically adults, and there's something that happened earlier on that, they were told this isn't good, or that's weird, or why would you do that, and whatnot. And Chuck was the complete opposite of that. It was the no that can crush a yes, and his whole thing was to get it out. Like, let's see what this is, and then let's sift through that. There's a process for creativity, but it's one that promotes it and fuels it while getting down and sifting to the, to that kernel and that nugget that's there. And it's not just in the arts, it's into everything. So what the Chuck Jones Center has done really well is take the philosophy of Chuck himself, which is lived through, Linda and Craig and everybody with the center, and getting people to ignite that. And I get the biggest kick out of watching, kids just let it all out, and whatever they're thinking, and describe this, and that's interesting, tell me about that. And then you get into adults, and what Chuck would do. And I've heard the story so many times, and I repeat it when I do it at the events that we do, is people would come and be like, well, I can't draw Bugs Bunny, I couldn't do that, I couldn't even draw a stick figure, and my favorite is I couldn't draw a straight line. And Chuck would be like, why does it have to be a straight line? And you watch when people take, and I did this one that was just out here in my town, of Inverness. We worked with the Orlando Magic a few weeks ago, same thing. And people that say they can't do something, well, Chuck would be like, could you draw a circle? Well, yeah. All right. Well, could you draw 3 circles? Well, I could do that. Well, then I could teach you how to draw Bugs Bunny. Sure enough, he would teach them how to draw Bugs Bunny, starting with 3 circles. And I've had more adults that have come away from that you just look at their faces. That's all you have to do. You look at the smile on their face and that sense of accomplishment. And then you say, if you could do this and you didn't think you could, what else could you do? In whatever form it is. Doesn't have to be the arts, could be whatever. And that's that spark of, the exercising your creativity, that we're so passionate about, because we see it happen in real time. Like, you watch a frustration and something self-conscious, and, that you're bearing deep, that you don't want to, self-doubt, let me put it that way. And you watch that in 5 minutes go from, no, I can't do that, to look what I just did. And you're using a character that you grew up with, that you have an emotional connection with. So it's not like we're doing something, even, which we could use anything, but we're using something that we all have an attachment to, which is Chuck's. You look at all the characters in the films, great directors, right? But who really gave them the personalities? It's Chuck and his team, right? The Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, all that stuff. So that attachment people have with a well-known character that brings something of joy to them and happiness. And now they're able to take that feeling and do something to recreate that, right? And I love it. And it's been hundreds of thousands of people over the decades, and it never gets old. It's always fascinating. It always puts, it makes my heart smile to watch that happens. And it's what I know for the team. I will, and I won't speak for the team at Chuck Jones to say, like, I know that's part of what fuels us to keep going, is because we watch that happen, and we want that for everybody. So me personally participating in Red Dot, like, it's not an obligation that I feel like, well, I just have to do this. I want to do this. My obligation is, I have benefited greatly from this, just in my own life, of the people that I've gotten to see, the encouragement that I've gotten. And I want to fuel that same thing, which is donating a piece to raise funds so that our team with Chuck Jones can go back out and continuing to reach people of all ages, right? And make that same connection with them. And I've had a blast doing it. This is, what is it? I started in 13, I guess. So like it was Red Dot 2 or whatever, it was Red Dot 3. Yeah, it was Red Dot 3. And, I started with Red Dot 3. Now I'm at Red Dot 16 and, putting together another piece and coming out for the event. And what I find fascinating too about the fact that we landed at the Segerstrom Center with the Shelbys is, if you just look at that movie Ford versus Ferrari and what Carroll Shelby had to do, one, in design, the creativity to design a certain car, put a big fat engine in this thing to beat Ferrari on something, all the complications that they had to be creative and they had to think differently. So you take that spirit of Carroll Shelby and what they put in, and now we're sitting in a place that is honoring beautiful cars, and just a model of engineering and design, like gorgeousness. And we're hosting an event that's all about creativity and spurring that on too. So it really is a merging of like two wonderful worlds that just make absolutely the most sense. And the Segerstroms have been phenomenal in their support and their want and their need to like get all of this out to the community as well has been fantastic.
One thing you've neglected there, Ben, is that one, you're on the board of directors and have been for a while. So are you, Mike, which is a phenomenal. I so appreciate the participation, each of you guys. But Ben, you have gone above and beyond by establishing a regional center for creativity in the Chicagoland area and got that up and going with thousands of people going through the programs and spreading the news of creativity around the entire Chicagoland area, starting in Schaumburg, and museum, library exhibitions. I mean, we had some of the greatest things out there. And then when you got tired of the cold, you decided to take the whole kit and caboodle, leave it running in Chicagoland, and start the whole thing in Central Florida again. So, I don't know when you're moving next, but we're just going to get that going. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody remembers and knows that, as we expand, and 27 years is quite a while, but after we did the numbers, Ben, we're clearly over 1 million people impacted through our programs, our big events, our exhibitions, our lectures, our film festivals that continue to expand. We've been in 18 states, so you've only got 32 more states to go to. Let's get it going. I got to go to Alaska. We've got Hawaii. We got Hawaii, so yeah, we're fledgling in so many different places. So hopefully, if anybody who's seeing this wants to bring programs to your community, it really depends on how we can work together to bring programs there. But that's what the Red Dot really is about. Allow us to raise funds creatively and to continue to expand the reach of how the Chuck Jones Center for Creativity impacts people, not just young people. We do programs with adults. I still call them seniors because, I'm in that range, but we also work with people who live on the autism spectrum for the last 14 years, and the impact that we've had there, that continues to grow. So it is trying to, and being successful at having those sparks, like you talked about, Ben. You can see it in people's faces as they, like, I can. And that's interesting. And the exercise of that part of their brain that they sometimes forget about. And I think it's super important. It's become even more important in my eyes these days as learning models become more of a thing in artificial intelligence, that we don't rely specifically on that for everything, that our creativity will continue and needs to be exercised so that we can utilize our own imagination, our own creativity, and see how we can utilize the tools in the future effectively, because we don't want that to wane, particularly in our young people.
So one of the things I want to throw back, because Ben made me think of it too, and Craig, you just kind of echoed it to a degree, is, I love nostalgia. I love old cars. I love all that stuff. But one of the things about this event, although the Segerstrom Center is beautiful and it's all those things, but I think it's just like a meshing of nostalgia in a way. Cause like Craig said, Ben said, you come packing a lot of these memories when it comes to the Looney Tune characters and Bugs Bunny and all these things. But then you get in this space that just oozes classic cars and gas pumps and all this stuff. And it's like this perfect melding of nostalgia. So that said, and you guys can jump in on this, but what can somebody expect from this event? So if they show up in person, what can they expect? Or even if they do it virtually? I've done it virtually and it's still a great experience. So whoever wants to jump in, I'd love to hear, how would you explain this to somebody who's maybe never been?
Well, I tell you what, one of the things as you guys were talking about this, that, the nostalgia, and some people are like, oh, those are characters that I grew up with. And I got to tell you, this is now, I think we're going on like 6 or 7 generations who say I grew up on these characters. And so, it goes back to the 30s and 40s when people used to go see them in the theaters. And that was literally nearly 100 years ago. So, one of the things that I have heard, from people who are, octogenarians and older, that I grew up on these characters. And still to this day, the 20 somethings, the 30 somethings, I grew up on these characters. And so there is something unique about the history of the Looney Tunes characters and what Chuck brought, that it seems to be a great bridge for generations to have something to connect with, that grandchildren and grandparents can connect, parents and children, and there's all of these connections. We each have our own memories of it, but it's a great way to share. And the Looney Tunes Warner Brothers continues to want to embrace the longevity of these characters. There's new things being created even this year using the Looney Tunes characters in Chuck Jones style that are coming out this year. So I think people will find that you've got people that are enjoying the nostalgia and others that are just there and love these characters. And so you get a gamut of generations who are coming together to celebrate. The biggest thing that I hear from people is this is the most fun fundraiser that I've ever been to. I smiled from the time I walked in the door to the time I left. And I just get, they're saying, I just get goosebumps coming into the place, seeing the entertainment, hearing the people who are speaking and talking about the center, and being able to experience the pieces of artwork on the wall individually and meeting those artists in person. Many of them are there, and you get to find out what inspires them. And so that's what it seems to be all about, is this mosh pit of creativity.
Yeah, and you walk in the door and it's a gorgeous facility, right? So you're coming out to a thing that you already know. It's not your typical gala, it's not your typical thing, right? Because we've got Bugs Bunny starring and and all these good things that we grew up with. And as you walk through the doors, it is, and you've been there, Mike, it's stunning what they've done in this display. So you talk about 90 of the cars that they can show, and they have how many others? Another 60 or something that on. So like it's packed in there with gorgeous vehicles. Just how they design out the facility is phenomenal. And then within that, we got stacks of artwork on walls and stuff that are all around that you get to go experience. The food is great. We're always doing something different with food. We've got classic films playing all around. So you're immersed in Looney Tunes in this, Shelby Museum. We've got live art. So this year again, Trevor Carlton is coming back, who is world famous Disney fine artist as well, and absolutely loves Chuck and all the characters. And so he's been with us now for several years. He's coming back and painting live again, which Mike, you and I have bid each other on and gotten into war over a couple of times. I think you beat me out the last time. And so, you can expect to not only just be in a creative environment where you're getting to see original pieces by people who just gotten to, here's like our theme this year is laughter, right? And, to me, the best film cinematic laugh sequence, animated or live action, is Porky Pig and Daffy Duck and Robin Hood Daffy. That's it. Every time. You just want to play that clip, I'd laugh, right? And that whole idea, and what we're evoking in as people are coming out and people are creating pieces to go along with that. And you're seeing these new and different takes on the characters, situations, all kinds of stuff. And it's a buffet for the eyeballs, for sure. So expect great films being shown, great artwork, great food, great company, and great conversation, and just a great experience in watching creativity come to life.
And for those of us who are somewhat competitive, silent auctions that continue, and as you're looking, and it is online, it is on your phone, you're bidding on things, you're getting notified that you're getting outbid, which is just a frustrating thing. And I've had it before where literally I'm like, I got outbid, and I look over and Ben's just laughing on the other side. He's like, I just outbid you. I know it. And so even if you're not there in person, we're looking for probably 80 to 100 works of artwork donated. That if you can't find something in there, whether you can be there or not, to add to your collection to support the Center for Creativity, I just challenge you, because it's not just Looney Tunes, it's fine art that's being donated, it's other characters that are being created and donated. So take a look as we send it out. Again, red.auction.org. Go there, sign up, even if as a bidder, even if you're not going to buy a ticket, sign up as a bidder so that you get notified when artists and the art gets added. So it's fun even if you're not there in person.
We'll close out with that, but I would add one thing is that you just go take a look, if nothing else, because you'll be amazed at how much artwork is there and how unique some of it is, from, like you said, from, the Warner Brothers characters to Dennis the Menace to fine works of art, or even, stuff that even some of the students have submit. So great stuff. Thank you guys for coming on again, talking about Red Dot, and, hopefully we'll see some people there.